It's my pleasure to introduce Rebecca Ringuette. Rebecca is a principal open science scientist at the Heliophysics Digital Resource Library at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. The primary focus of her work is to support the community's transition to open science, which is a multifaceted and complementary pursuit alongside the NASA Open Source Science Initiative, which includes the NASA TOPS program. So Rebecca will be discussing how to make software citation and related metadata easy to create and implement into existing infrastructure, and discuss research practices, impact assessments, and the path forward on how this could be achieved. Thank you for being here, Rebecca. Please take it away.
Thanks, Alan. All right, so I'm here to talk to you all about an idea we've come up with, a path forward to improve software citation. So as Alan said, I'm with HGRL. We are the data repositories in heliophysics for NASA. We store data and to some extent software and looking to expand there. We're also collaborating with some publishers and of course the Science Explorer and some other community efforts to increase publication transparency overall. All right, so first, why is this important to NASA? Well, NASA has a stated push towards open science. NASA has defined 4 pillars of it. I'm not going to read the descriptions, it's available on their website. But the 4 important pieces to open science, as from the perspective of NASA, is that the science be transparent, available, reproducible, and collaborative. And just note that that FAIR acronym, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, comes in under that available pillar here. Okay, so if you arrange these, you actually get an acronym that's easy to remember, CART. But as much as you give people wheels to a cart, if you don't give them a platform to put it on, it doesn't go anywhere. And that platform that we need to serve to the community is that we need to make these practices easy, or we cannot expect the community to adopt these things with any reasonable timescale. All right. All right, but why focus on software citations? Why should I take my time here? Well, 3 components, and only one of them is open science. So taking a moment on the open science one, we need to enable version-specific citations for software because that is recommended by Force 11 for those citations. And also by offering those citations to the community in an easy fashion, have to make it easy, we also increase the likelihood that those research publications can be reproduced because that version is correctly indicated. And then creating those permanent landing pages for software via those DataCite DOIs simplifies FAIR by so many factors. But even beyond open science, software citations are important from the NASA perspective. And I don't speak officially for NASA. That is the Office of the Chief Science Data Officer. So just saying similar things to what they say here. So it's also important uh, for impact assessment. So we're being pressured increasingly to give some sort of assessment of the impact of the things that we host at our repositories in heliophysics. And this information can be used to prioritize funding for one research package versus another based on that input, help coordinate community efforts towards one package that's being used by more people rather than something that has less usage, for example, right? These things are not established yet. But another important factor here is that the community, as part of the decadal survey for solar and space physics, so heliophysics, there is concern expressed in that decadal survey about retention of research software engineers and related capabilities. Sorry. And that concern for retention is based on their work not being cited. When their work is not cited, the impact of their work can't be expressed properly in performance reviews, which means they have lower career opportunities in our field and they tend to move on faster. So if we can include that practice of version-specific software citation, their work gets cited, their performance reviews go better, and they hopefully stick around longer, which is more efficient use of their time and the time to train new personnel. All right, so current challenges for software citation. So the typical user behavior from the perspective of researchers, at least, they will install the software package. They may or may not use it for their publication, but if they do, they get this message in the Open Science 101 course that NASA produced Now you're supposed to cite the software in your publication. Okay, so it's been months since they installed the thing. This is an important package in their research result to produce it rather. So now they go look for a citation. And here lies the problem. Citations are difficult for them to find. They might first look in the software package or maybe in the language if you can think of the R programming language, but that's not a common feature outside of R. They might recall how they installed the package, and if they do, they might look on that page to go find it. Um, Not always there. I haven't noticed any of them there, at least for the Python packages. They might, if they can find the GitHub, there's some places there they might look. But keep in mind, most researchers are focused on their science, not particularly spending 2 days trying to gather citations. So they might look one or two places, spend a couple minutes on this, and if they can't find the citation, they will quit and move on, which means that work doesn't get cited. But even when the user does find the citation in the current scenario, the current landscape, it's not always correct. So publishers regard that DataCite DOI metadata as the record of truth, as the correct thing to use in the citation, that metadata associated with it. But we have conflicting citation information from the different sources that are available to users. And part of this is because there are too many metadata files for software developers not only to create, but to maintain and keep synchronized so that that citation information is the same across all of these places. Another complication is that there's a lack of support in the DataCite metadata structure to indicate reference publications alongside those version-specific DOIs. So, facing all of these challenges, we have to remember we must make finding the correct citation for the software easy, even after that software has been downloaded and installed. But how, right? So, here's a proposed path forward. Definitely worth discussion. 4 steps in a couple pieces. So, the first thing that we're thinking is to build a central interoperable code meta file. Okay, what might this look like? Well, the key is to have small changes from what we currently have, but strategic choices so that this can be interoperable with the current landscape, current needs, and current infrastructures that exist. So first rule, it has to be interoperable with those DataCite requirements. So it's noteworthy that DataCite actually accepts schema.org JSON LD as input to create DOIs. So that pathway already exists, and that's one really easy alignment that this code meta file can do since we're already so close to that schema.org. Um, Another requirement here is to satisfy the Google schema.org, those JSON LD requirements. Those are really not that much for software, but aligning with the terms that they look for in their required components. All right, there's also probably going to be some additional requirements Zenodo wants to put on this file to satisfy what they need to do with it. We need to make sure to provide those fields that GitHub needs for the cite the repository feature. One critical piece, one very strategic piece is to align with the science on schema.org and combine our conversations to line up with those shackle patterns conversations, which is going to be particularly important for funding agencies for those funding and identifier structures. And then, of course, incorporate the Research Software Alliance Actionable Fair for Research Science Fair for Research Software, working group results that are being created. Step 2, we have to make sure that metadata file is easy to populate and maintain, or it's going to fall out of sync. So auto extractions are already capable, already done. So for example, that SumF, if that's how you say it, that SumF package is doing a great job. But there's some features that are needed. Some of them aren't even possible yet. So there's some conversations there. And that extraction has to be done in a way that doesn't require pieces that may not exist yet, right? So if you're making a code meta file that's going to be used in that pathway from GitHub to Zenodo and then to make a DOI, well, then the DOI doesn't exist yet, so we can't pull that. But we have to keep the metadata coming from the sources and in that file synchronized routinely. Step 3, implement that metadata in core services. So there's really no use in asking people to create yet another metadata file if there's no actual use for it. We have to offer services on top of that and integrate into the existing infrastructure. So that file that we create aligns in all of those different ways. should become the new central file in the GitHub to Zenodo workflow. So this is after, of course, conversations with GitHub for their feature and for Zenodo with their needs to incorporate all of that. A really big plus for this is that that file then also doubles as the source for the datasite DOI metadata. So guaranteed synchronization there. Really important there. This file would then also replace the citation.cff file in the cite the repository feature. And I say replace because that file isn't used for any other pieces. And by having a second file that produces citation information complicates the infrastructure and can cause, again, those problems in different citation information available in different places. Okay, so another piece is to collaborate with GitHub and Zenodo to embed the metadata in that file into the landing pages, both on GitHub and on Zenodo, because that does a huge increase on findability for that software using the internet search engines. And then we can begin coordinating with the different installation methods on what pieces they might need if combination or coordination is important there. So at this point, only on step 3, the resolve problems will be very important progress here. That citation information for the software will be not only aligned with the Force 11 guidelines, providing that version-specific citation and information about a reference publication, but also the software landing pages will be more findable. So this is very important for open science too. Okay, last one. So then attain official standard status. Okay, so what does that mean? So a really nice path forward for this is to join the scienceonscamba.org group under ESIP, so Earth Science Informatics Partners, and work towards becoming regarded as a standard by ESIP. All right, so how do you do that? So you collaborate with this scienceonscamba.org group on the structure, the field choices. They're talking about right now shackle shapes for data sets. A lot of those should be copied over for software where it's relevant. And then that knowledge and those discussions can also occur for software with the same experts in the room. It'd be really beneficial for code meta. So then you submit that updated guideline to ESIP for consideration as a standard. There'll be some iteration back and forth, and then you get the gold star, right, if you will. You get that standard badge from ESIP, and then can follow more of the procedures beyond that. So once that standard status is achieved, then it's time to build a search interface based on that, because the iterations have died down. We now have an agreed upon standard with the infrastructure services, with ESIP, and we can work towards providing services on top of that. So some of those services would be a search interface based on that metadata standard, a fair for research software tool. So this is a little bit down the line, right? Once that RISA organization is done with their recommendations. And then we can even work with some of the more major, more adopted programming languages to embed citation information from that file into the actual language itself, like what was done for the R language. Okay. So in closing, we must make the correct citation, finding the correct citation for software easy to find, even after the software is installed, or we can't expect the software to be cited. We have to make those easy. And I'll leave you with a laundry list here of other things that didn't make it into the presentation so far, but that this informal publication transparency working group prioritized as worthy of pursuing and quite useful. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. A provocative talk. I mean, it's a great call to action. Are there any questions to start with? Otherwise, I have a few. Daniel has also been putting things into the chat, but my one issue is that I feel like there's this chicken and egg problem with code meta.json and the synchronization problem with code meta.json. If we place it as the central source of truth, and I think that we should, I like the idea. I think we have to have a good way to edit it, to manipulate it, because people won't want to write to they don't you know what no one wants to edit a giant JSON file, especially as it gets large. So And then, as Daniel indicated, there's all of this metadata is already scattered in lots of different places. So we have to kind of find weight pathways to get people from those communities into funnel them into code meta and then demonstrate the value of doing so. So I guess we're since there's a lot of moving pieces here. How do you think where should we start?
Well, I think a first approach is something that Jonathan Starr is leading in track 2 of that open innovation sprint. Is extracting that metadata from different places. And Daniel, you've already done a lot of work and led a lot of work in this area. So pulling that information from the other metadata files that already exist into code meta in if not automated, a semi-automated way is going to be a key here. The trick will be some of these things are created from other software processes, right? So for example, the contributors file, in some cases that file is created by a bot. So I'm thinking of this allcontributors.org. They put their contributor information. They have their automated processes that the software developers already implement. NASA has used this too. It was really good. But that goes into a file. So that is the source of the correct contributor information, all with role names, ORCID IDs, hopefully. If not, that should be fixed. But that's the source of truth. So pulling that information from the sources of truth into this file so that it can flow into that DataCite DOI metadata and that embedded schema.org, that's going to be a nice pathway to do that. Kind of the interstate, if you will, between all of these different on-ramps and then where the important places this needs to go.
Thanks. Daniel?
Right. Since my name has been mentioned, I wanted to also add a few comments here. First, thank you for the talk because, well, to me, you're preaching to the choir. I'm completely convinced in that that is the path forward. When we were in Psycodes, we also reached a community decision that I'm gonna be in the SOMEF framework. I'm gonna be stripping out the core functionality and putting it as a Psycodes in a Psycodes repository, and that functionality will have all the extraction from metadata from the GitHub APIs, the README, and also basically it will strip out all the machine learning and will leave the core parts so that the community can also contribute as a core package and maybe import it and extend it in the ways that they prefer. I haven't done that yet. I said it will take me at least 2-3 weeks because I have a lot of deadlines before the end of the month, but this will be there. And I hope that collaboratively we can maintain maybe also some of these I'm not sure if translations, but at least the extraction with all the package and metadata files that we have been mentioning, right? And at least putting everything into code meta, and then we can see how can we put the code meta into other stuff, possibly with another repository. But I think that having a community tool is a little bit more powerful than having just a tool that my lab created or whatever, because we remove the ego from the equation. We just put the community behind, which is what I would like to. I think it's the first step towards achieving this, right? Then in terms of usability, what you mentioned about the R packages, I think it's a big way forward because maybe we just need to create small packages, like one package for Python that says, hey, how do I cite this repo? And if it's or this package in Python, and it will go to the package, find the citation or the code meta file, and then render it for the person who wants to do it, right? So maybe that's also a way forward, and like having that command so that people can get to whatever metadata they want from the source of truth, right? So, well, definitely happy to continue working on this.
So one benefit that I see with the approach that our language has taken is it's embedded in the language. It's not another package to install that they didn't have to find, right? Um, Once upon a time, a few months ago, I found a discussion on the not in Python, like on the Python discussion on their issues on the language itself. There has been discussion off and on about this, but no real push, no real motivation to actually go through with it. So I'm wondering if now that we have a lot of structure here and maybe a path forward on how to do this, especially once it's regarded as a standard by ESIP, there will be that motivation to say, hey, we have a standard, it's been accepted by this big group uh, working towards other things. We have to make software citation easy. We have agencies behind us, at least in the US. There's international interest in this. We really want this embedded in the language. There's so many packages here. We want them to be cited properly. That could be a really strong argument, really strong push to get that forward.
Also, as sorry to very quickly say something that we are in the process in the next, I think, couple of months on the next revision of code meta. So some of the other requests that you had, like incorporating the science on schema for funding and funder, I think this will be there, and we have an opportunity to make some of these changes. So I think it's very timely.
Yeah, there's a scienceonschema.org meeting this afternoon. It's every month but okay. I guess
Well,
next question.
yeah, we have three more hands up. So
Yeah.
the order I see right now is Pete, Alex, and then Michael.
Okay, then I guess I will go first, but if anybody wants to stomp on me, feel free. So Rebecca, thanks for a great talk. Your comment about making it easy to cite software and for the retention for RSEs and them getting credit for it reminded me that at least in my area of science, it's pretty common for the log files to dump out a page or two of citations for the individual developers. But those are very frequently the citations for the papers that go along with the software rather than the software itself. So I guess it's a two-part question. Are funding agencies and people that care about hiring and promotion and retention looking at software citations yet? And has doing outreach for developers who want to make it easy to cite their software to say, rather than dumping this in the logs, rather than dumping your journal citation in the logs, here, dump it in this format instead, give this to the users, that'll make it easy for them.
You might have to remind me of the second question.
Ah.
I'm a one at a time kind of brain, sorry. So
my questions are frequently incoherent. I apologize in advance for that.
No, I have trouble holding them in my mind. So I guess let me handle the second question and you remind me of the first one.
Okay.
So I'm in Heliophysics right now, and there is a Python community in Heliophysics called Python and Heliophysics Community. So pyhc.org. So that's where my context comes from for the answer to your second question. So that community is it's a small group of 80 to 90 software packages, and those developers come and they meet in person once a year, virtually the other 6 months, right? I brought this up to that group at the last meeting that was in person almost a year ago now. No, that was November, sorry. And the pushback I got was we already have all these metadata files we have to make to get our Python package on Conda or on PyPy, and then we have to make one to get it onto Zenodo and that automated pipeline to get the version-specific DOIs for all the major releases. Why do I have to make yet another file to get this other feature to work? Why can't they just use this thing I already have to do and make this thing easier? Because now my contributors file is out of sync with my Zenodo file. What my job is to develop software, not to manage all of these different, almost 20 different meta files in some of the examples. Like my work, these people don't get paid to make sure their citations are correct across everything. They get paid to have results in the software that works with good documentation. We hope, right? We hope good documentation. So the pushback from them, they have to have something easy, something that's Maybe it takes a minute or two, maybe ideally even automated based on stuff that's coming from other places. We have to make it easy for them. They're not getting paid for this. Can you remind me of the first question or any comments on my answer?
I think your answer makes my other question kind of or my other part obsolete.
Okay.
So because it sounds like the developers in your community are not already writing information to the output logs or the output files in a remark field about this is how you cite my software. And that's
For the
something that,
ones that are bothering with it, yes.
okay,
So,
okay. Thank you.
sure.
Alex?
Yes, thanks. So thanks a lot, Rebecca, for sort of like giving a very nice overview of all the problems that we're facing. I think so. Speaking from another perspective and how we've seen this from from the past years of trying to deal with the mess, right? There's a very complex sort of upstream and downstream consumer pattern between the Node, GitHub, Google indexing pages, many other systems trying to do the same, right? And the thing is that they are, how to say, they are a core part of all of the added value, basically. Like, so adding any of these metadata formats has a lot of added value. For example, at Google, if you index your schema.org, your JSON.d, then you get picked up by Google and get indexed and show up in search results. Or if you do something fancy with datasets, you see your datasets appearing in Google Dataset search, right?
Yeah.
So if anyone has, so again, we get to this chicken and egg problem where if anybody has to do something with any of these, any metadata format, they have to have some sort of assurance that, this is going to get picked up by GitHub and Google and whatever, like, again, you do some sort of like a prioritization of what's most valuable for you. So how are you planning to deal with the aspect that GitHub and Google are probably slow to change and slow to adapt and slow to basically adopt any kind of new format? So it was already a big struggle to get ORCID in. It was a big struggle to get citation CFF in. So how do we make sure that basically that we keep these channels sort of like, open and available, and actually we have this challenge in the first place, because right now it feels very scattered, let's say. So all the efforts that we do plus how they get picked up by industry, let's say, or I won't call it industry, but yeah, commercial
Okay.
services.
Well, one thing is to demonstrate interoperability first. So DataCite from the NASA perspective is a huge priority because for the data repositories, we are required to use DataCite to create DOIs. It's likely going to be the same for software, and especially since that's already easily possible through that GitHub to Zenodo link. So many people already use that. So I don't expect kind of a change in the game from NASA headquarters on what kind of DOI to use for that, or what kind of PID. And that's common across the field of science in the US at least. There needs to be a transition period. So once we have interoperability, as in we align with what DataCite requires for their schema.org, and we're lining up with these other pieces, then it should be easy for those things to be adopted alongside what already exists. And then for a time, both things exist. So in Zenodo's case, both that zenodo.json exists and then this code meta.json exists, and they have the choice to do either one. The challenge in the transition is to work towards making sure these things are aligned and producing the same citation information. Same thing with the cite this repository feature, although I expect that transition to be faster. So then that cite this repository, that feature, I feel like that could be easily adapted to take more than one file also, where one is pulling from this JSON all day and one is pulling from that CFF file. And then at some point the priority gets flipped, as in if there's both the citation.cff file and this code meta.json, if it sees both, it chooses the code meta.json because that is also used for the DOI. And then eventually the citation can be removed. But in all of these things, doing a hard switch is not only going to be just hard to do, that doesn't get communicated quickly enough. Like even with software development, you give deprecation warnings. Like this is going to break in 3 things. Please fix it. 2, 1. Okay, now it's broken. Now go fix it because you waited too long, right? But that's the kind of practice we need to do with this change too. That's personal opinion.
Great. And so because we are in the interest of time, let's go move on to Michael.
Cool. Um, so as context, before I joined Manchester, I'd been working in public service research and development at the BBC for 22 and a half years. Well, lots of different things. A lot of the things I've been doing is with Python and C++, and we published a lot of stuff, and with lots of stuff, a lot of what we did was applied research, though. So it was research and development. So for us, that's kind of what my perspective of looking at this is. So I look at this and I go, okay, so how can I use this? And my immediate result was to go have a look for PyPy for CodeMeta, and I found codemeta.py. Now I stepped out briefly, so it may have been mentioned by Daniel earlier. I'm not sure if it was, but that seems to be a project which has existed for about 7 years. And I was just wondering what the relationship between the two there was. The other thing was kind of like you mentioned that people who want to make citations, obviously, they're not going to want to spend a lot of time faffing around trying to find the right place to do. But likewise, most people who produce open source are not interested in producing lots of metadata and upfront things because it has no value to them personally. There is a small subset of research software engineers who produce these data, where they do want the citations, which this clearly addresses very well. But I was just wondering how your project relates to the CodeMeta project, CodeMeta PY project on PyPy or not, or whatever. I don't really know. It's just an open question, really.
So I don't have an answer to the first one. Maybe Daniel
Okay.
or someone else would be better there. But
I
for the
don't know.
second one, and encouraging software developers to have citations, that pressure is also coming. That's pressure's coming from outside of this group. So publishers are increasingly and correctly requiring those version-specific citations for software. So their default, oh, let's go to Zenodo or let's go to Dataverse. Let's go get this done. This takes me 5 minutes. I put in my information there, right? We at least get that thing cited. This is also coming increasingly from pressure from funding agencies. So thinking in the U.S., that's my wheelhouse. So NASA requires these kinds of things. It's in the new policy SPD 41A. Well, it's been out 2.5 years now. I guess it's not so new anymore. And then you're seeing increasing similar pressure also from NSF, I think also from NOAA, and some of the other agencies are coming online. They want the citations. Even if it's restricted, you can make it DOI, cite the thing, and we're happy. That's increasingly the comment that I'm hearing.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm going to stop the recording here, and then maybe we can continue